kind of another consideration a little further down the road, so. For the short-term period, Andover was looked at as our outside of basin source of supply. The other communities in the Ipswich River Basin are basically in the same situation we are, where they're at their allowed volumes to withdraw, and they can't just pump unlimited out of the ground in order to sell it to North Reading. So Andover, drawing from the Merrimack River, is a much more, a much higher source of supply, if you will.
Mr. O'Leary.
Mr. Chairman, based on the recommendation of the DPW Director, I move that, 1, the water block rate tiers be changed to first tier 0 to 110 gallons per day, second tier 110 to 250 gallons per day, and third tier over 250 gallons per day. 2, the collection rate be set at 95%. 3, the revised indirect costs be used as presented and be adjusted annually. 4, the rate include provisions to generate sufficient revenue to return stabilization monies used to offset prior year's annual water department revenue deficits at a rate of approximately $100,000 per year.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Further discussion before we take a vote?
Yeah,
Paul?
I will, because I want people to know why I'm voting the way I'm voting. Gave this a lot of consideration over the last week, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. The first factor is that there was the intent of the board that sat here a year ago to repay the monies into those two funds that were taking out over the last couple of years. So that's one. So I would vote in favor of placing money back into those funds to repay the monies that we're taking out. It's a little bit of semantics between Mr. Prisco and I. He'd rather just, if I heard him correctly last week, just write that off, but he was okay with a surplus. So that's a little difference between he and I, but I think that's a little bit of semantics. But considering the fact that we've had essentially 2 rate increases over the last year, and we're proposing, well, the motion on the table proposes to increase at this present time an additional 10%, if my numbers are right. I'd vote against this particular motion because I'd be looking to repay at the rate of $50,000 annually back into those particular funds. And where we look at this rate on an annual basis, we could adjust that accordingly next year. So that's why I'd be voting against this particular motion, and that's the reason for it. It's just simply the difference between the 50 and the 100,000 back into those funds this year or next year.
Any other comments before I call for the question? On the question, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move the water rates for fiscal year 2012 for water bills issued after July 1st, 2011 at the following rates. First tier, $7.30 per 1,000 gallons up to 110 gallons per day. Second tier, $10.70 per 1,000 gallons from 110 gallons per day to 250 gallons per day. Third tier, $14.60 per 1,000 gallons over 250 gallons per day.
Motion by Mr. O'Leary. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion carries 3-2.
Mr. Chairman, I move that the water rates for fiscal year 2013 for water bills issued after July 1st, 2012 at the following rates. First tier, $7.50 per 1,000 gallons up to 110 gallons per day. Second tier, $10.99 per 1,000 gallons from 110 gallons per day to 250 gallons per day. And third tier, $14.99 per 1,000 gallons over 250 gallons per day.
Motion by Mr. O'Leary. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Yule. Questions? Comments?
Okay. You're at the point of unreasonable now, okay? You set the rate for next year. I understand what your goal was, what you were trying to accomplish here, Steve, and try to set the rates for the next 3 years. But what,
Steve?
that percentage, oh, you made the motion?
Yeah, I made a motion.
Okay. So you don't want it to be accountable for your motion, then
More than
take
happy
away
to-
your motion,
No, I'm-
okay?
I'm following
But
through
you're
on
at the
the
point of
recommendation of the
unreasonable,
Department of Public
okay?
Works.
This doesn't make any
Chair.
sense. And all of a sudden, excuse me,
Well, I think when you communicate with someone, I think there should be some respect shown in that direction.
okay. Anyway, getting back to my point. I think you've done enough for one day. I would ask you to consider not going through with this motion. Let's see what the damage is done with what you've already approved and see how it goes. And then we can make another rate increase whenever we want to. And you gotta remember, it isn't like we've had an enterprise fund for 2 years, okay? And I hate to point out the finance committee, but you're the ones that also made these recommendations. And it was like all of a sudden, you guys woke up that we had an enterprise fund and that we were having a deficit. And then all of a sudden, now we gotta fix it. We gotta fix it this year and forever, based on some projection, which I don't believe in, okay? I'm not impressed with how we've gotten where we are, okay? So I ask you again, please consider striking this motion, let what you've already set in place run its course, and see how it comes out. There's no need to go and approve this kind of a rate increase again for the next year.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Yule?
Yes, I think Mike's points are well taken. However, you can go on the reverse end of that. We can have these rates in there, and as a conscientious board, we can look at them, we see how things are working out. We can go backwards, we can reduce rates. We have that ability to do that. That's why we do them every year, okay? But if we want to be progressive, we need to plan ahead and then see what our decisions develop, and then make a decision a year from now or 2 years from now and say, you know what? We really don't need to do this. Everything's worked better than we thought. The economy has turned around. Let's reduce these rates. I know I'm not afraid to do something like that, all right? So, and I don't think anybody here is afraid to do anything like that. So I think we need to have a game plan, put it in place, and watch it like a hawk, and then adjust accordingly a year from now.
Well, this is one that, I was gonna speak up, Michael, so I'm kind of on your side. I see no reason to vote on rates passed this year. We have a policy in place that says we get a recommendation from the water commissioners, and that we revisit the water rates annually, and therefore I'm happy with ending it at this point. We've set our rate for 2012. We'll collect data, and come November, we're gonna do it early because, you know, the rate has to be in place for the next fiscal year, that we take a look at the water rates again.
I guess again, I'm neither here nor there on it, other than this was a recommendation from the Department of Public Works on how to handle it. And I assume in order to give the Department of Revenue a comfort level when they come back and revisit how we're handling the enterprise fund, that we have a game plan in place, we have rates set for the next 3 years. And again, we can adjust those, but they can see that we've addressed the situation head-on, and we have a game plan in place to ensure that the enterprise is solvent. And that's all I see this as doing. I don't deny the fact that we're gonna revisit this, and I don't deny that there's a bright spotlight on this particular issue right now, too. So that, you know, we're gonna revisit it on an annual basis, and we can adjust it accordingly. But I think it's important to show the Department of Revenue that we do have a long-term rate plan in place, and we voted on it. You know, that's, and I assume that's why the Department of Public Works Director put this forward. I don't disagree with anything that's being said. I think we can do what you're suggesting.
I guess I would handle the DOR in the following way. I'd show them what the plan is, and I show them our policy about adopting or adjusting the rates, you know, on an annual basis, and leave it at that.
Mr. Chair.
I think Mr. Delaney?
You know, we can talk about adjusting rates downward, but I don't see that ever happening. Because once they're set, if we go this far, which I'm opposed to, at that point, whoever's sitting here will say, well, taxpayers are paying it, we just won't increase it going forward. We get an extra sum of money we can throw into Stickney, MBT, or General Enterprise Reserve Fund, or what have you. So I don't see it ever coming back down, quite honestly. Could be wrong. And I don't see why we're going forward past FY 2012. It just doesn't make sense. And that increase is almost a 14% increase for FY 2011. There's just no way that can be supported.
So, Mr. Yule?
Yes. I'm not going to agree or believe, Sean, that
don't
next
have to.
year, next year when this comes up, that if we had the opportunity to lower the rates, that you would not.
I didn't say
Because
I would not.
No, but
I
you
said
say
I don't
this
think that'd be the
board,
will
but
of
this
any board.
board, well, the board will may be the same next year. So when next year comes, and if that golden opportunity arises, I would think that this board would take advantage of that, and if that's an opportunity to lower the rates, we would. And just by your vote today would indicate that's what you would do. Okay? So, I think, that's the way that I'm looking at it. On the other hand, Mr. Misery, with all due respect, I was under the impression that when we began to do this study, get the study going, that this was one of the focal points that you were concentrating on in developing a 3 to 5 year game plan, and that this is what everyone's recommending, whether it's 50,000, 100,000, or whatever. As I recall, that was one of your focal points, that we should really have a plan in place.
I'm not proposing throwing the work that's been done out. What I'm saying is we don't need to adopt the 2013 and 14 water rates now.
Are we not at risk with the state coming back to us and say, well, you
I
only
don't
had a
think so.
one-year plan?
No.
That's what happened last time.
No, we had a deficit the last
The
time.
driving point is gonna be the balance sheet that we submit on June 30th. They're gonna look at the position of the town on June 30th of each and every fiscal year. That's their main concern. A long-term plan may or may not help, but what's gonna drive their decision is what the balance sheet shows as of June 30th when we close the books.
Further discussion.
If, again, it doesn't appear as though a majority of the board is in support of this, I would be more than happy to withdraw my motion if the seconder will withdraw their second.
I withdraw.
Okay. The issue is closed. We will have a water rate hearing next November. All right, next item on our agenda. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Water Commission, for all the hard work.
Is to approve the settlement agreement with windmill cases. Mr. Beliconis.
This is a settlement that's been previously approved by the board, but for your signing and executing it this evening, it involves the chief of police and the 2 lieutenants. Their action was independent of the litigation that was filed by the rank and file Teamsters Union.
Okay. Do we have a motion, Mr. Prisco?
I do. Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the settlement agreements between the Town of North Reading and Edward Nolan, Woburn District Court Case Number CV 0002. Kevin Brennan, Woburn District Court Case Number 1053 CV 000003. And Daniel Jones, Woburn District Court Case Number 1053 CV 000004.
Motion by Mr. Prisco, seconded by Mr. O'Leary. Any discussion?
Just so, I don't know if everyone's aware, this closes out the Quinville actions from the 2 lieutenants and the chief of police.
For which the dollars were appropriated and taken care of at the town meeting.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
We have some documents we gotta sign, so it's okay. I'll
Yeah.
sign and pass them around while we continue to work. Okay. Oh, sorry. You wanna do the...
Warrant articles.
I think I missed a
Which
page
is
there.
part of the budget. I think you should have copies of them from last week.